Hey guys, and in today's video we're going to be talking about safety. Now, just to start out, for those of you wondering what I've done to my hand, this wasn't a forge related problem. I actually had a pressure cooker in the kitchen explode on me and douse my hand and stomach with boiling water. And so I've got second degree burns on the top of my hand. For those of you who follow Instagram and Facebook, you'd already know this. But that's why I didn't have a live stream today. So sorry guys, but I will be back at it this next weekend coming. But anyway, I figured I'd talk a little bit about safety, given that I can't swing a hammer right now. It seems the most pertinent, especially given the fact that my hand is bandaged up. So in the workshop, safety is one of those things that we all hate to talk about, but also really need to talk about. And the reason that we hate to talk about it is obvious, is that it's a pain in the ass. Let's be honest. At the end of the day, taking those precautions is always annoying because you're constantly taking time out to change things up or put new things on before you actually get to the work. So some of us overlook certain safety aspects. And I'm not here to tell you that you need to throw on a full body flame-proof suit and, like chemical-proof gloves and all that kind of stuff before you get into your forging. You don't need to overprotect yourself, but there are a few small things that you can do every day and small items that you can carry around that will keep you safe from the majority of harm. Now, blacksmithing in itself, bladesmithing, is inherently dangerous. We always end up getting small injuries, small burns, small cuts, whack our thumb with a hammer. That kind of stuff happens. And so being prepared for that is a good idea. But it's also important to realize that sometimes bad things do happen. I mean, I had that incident last year where my hammer rebounded off the anvil and smacked me in the head hard enough to give me a minor concussion and a couple of stitches. I wasn't prepared for that. So one of those things to be prepared for is those serious injuries. Alex Steele's done a thing on trauma care. This isn't really about that. This is just about the minor stuff, but it's important to be aware of that kind of stuff. So to start off with, there's three main pieces of safety gear that everyone in their workshop should have. And that's eye protection, ear protection, and lung protection. Ears, eyes, and lungs are those things that are very easy to damage and not so easy to fix. Now, with eye protection, there are a lot of different kinds of eye protection you can get. These are just simple, Lexan safety glasses you can buy from your local hardware store. And these are good for pretty much most of the stuff that we do. If you're wanting higher rated stuff, the more expensive glasses you go, the more impact resistant they are, the more, kind of protective they are. It's important to have a good set of safety glasses and to use them. Now, I know that in my videos I don't tend to wear them when I'm forging. It's because I sweat quite a bit and these fog up really quickly, which means I can't see what I'm doing. But I'm taking a risk there. I'm taking a risk of damaging my eyes. If a piece of scale flies out and hits me in the eye, that's my problem. But it's something that I'm willing to risk, and I hope that you guys can take advice from me and not do what I do and just instead do what I say and try and protect your eyes whenever you can. When you're using an angle grinder or a power grinder like the belt grinder I have, these are a must, absolute must, and I wear them as well. So make sure that when you're using powered tools that you do wear eye protection. With hearing protection, obviously earmuffs are an option. They are annoying because they're quite large and they get in the way, but they're better than nothing. I tend to use earplugs quite a bit, and I used to have noise-cancelling earbuds that I listened to music with or audiobooks with, and I'm planning on getting another set of those, but those can be quite expensive. A cheap set of earmuffs laying around the shop means that if you don't have your earbuds with you, if you can't find a good set of earplugs because you've run out like I do occasionally, you still have hearing protection. For the gas forge that I runs at about 80 to 90 decibels when it's running at full volume, and that over long periods of time could damage my hearing. So it's really important that even if you don't feel like you need them, that you wear them when there's loud noise around, because over time, maybe not over a year or 2 years, But over 5, 6, 10 years, you're going to end up with permanent hearing loss, and that's something that you can't recoup. On to lung protection. Now, obviously, we've all seen these flimsy little dust masks, and if this is all you can afford, or if this is all you have, it's better than nothing. Absolutely better than nothing. Especially when you're working with woods on grinders and stuff like that. These are a must-have, at least, when you're working with anything that's going to be making a lot of dust. Certain woods are, they're poisonous to the lungs. A lot of hardwoods that I work with are really bad for your lungs. Some resins, micarta, that kind of stuff, is really bad for your lungs. And given that I have asthma, I am very careful about my lungs. But it's really important that even if you don't have lung issues, that you protect your lungs. So these are the very minimum. Or you can go with something like this, which is a 3M dust mask. Now, I don't have the chemical rated inserts for this. Like, you can get really high quality respirators that will protect you from not only dust, but also chemical fumes and welding fumes and stuff like that. It's important if you're going to be doing a lot of arc welding or any of kinds of welding that you're going to have a set like that, because you can protect yourself from metal fume fever, which comes from galvanization, that kind of thing. But these are really, really important for when you're grinding. And I prefer these because they're a lot more effective than the little dust masks that you can get a really good fit around your mouth, which means that you're not going to be inhaling a lot of that dust and really damaging your lungs over the long term. So make sure you've got a good set of respirator or a dust mask at least. So those are the three most important items: ears, eyes, and lungs. If you're protecting nothing else, those three should be your most important, because at the end of the day, without your lungs, you can't live. Without your ears, you can't hear, and without your eyes, you can't see. And if you can't see what you're doing, then you're never going to be able to work in a shop again. If you can't hear, it's a lot more difficult to, get around it day to day. And if you can't breathe, well, you're dead. So, beyond that, the next most important thing in a blacksmith shop is shoes. A lot of people overlook their shoes. I tend to overlook my shoes occasionally. I walk out here in bare feet, start forging. Again, do what I say, not what I do. In a blacksmith shop, you are going to drop hot stuff on the ground. Even if you don't notice it, you're going to cut small pieces of metal. If you're using a charcoal forge, you're going to have small pieces of burning charcoal. If you step on one of those things, they will stick to the sole of your foot and they will burn the heck out of you. These shoes have got several spots where I've stepped on really hot metal and actually damaged the shoe quite badly. But it's better that I damage the shoe and not my foot. So these are actually blue steel caps. These are actually a really good brand of shoes. I'm not sure if you can get them in the United States. But thick-soled work boots, I prefer lace-ups because they protect my ankles as well from when I trip over, which I do all the time. Protects me from spraining my ankle. So yeah, good high-quality work boots. You don't necessarily need steel caps, but when I work in an area where I have a lot of heavy pieces of material sitting on benches and stuff like that, they do fall off occasionally, and they do occasionally hit my foot. And when they do that, I don't want to crush my toes. So steel caps can be quite advantageous, especially if you're making hammers and stuff like that. Now, the next thing is that all blacksmiths work with fire. That's kind of what we do. Fire heats up our material so that we can work it. If you're working with fire, then one of the first things you should think about is how am I going to put that fire out? Now, I'm in a steel shed, and most of my wood is piled up in a corner, and it's mostly very large stock, so I don't think it's going to set fire very easily. But occasionally, I've got large piles of sawdust on the ground from when I'm using the grinder, or I've got shavings from when I'm using my spoke shave or plane, and those can catch fire really quickly. But not only that, I also have an incredibly large tank of oil, and I also have oil for wood finishing, like linseed oil and tung oil. I have chemicals like acetone and methylated spirits and stuff like that can catch fire really quickly. And if I don't have something to put it out with, I can literally burn my shop down or destroy important equipment, like my air compressor, my welder. Those things can die in an instant from fire. So, to that end, I always have one of these. a fire extinguisher. Now, this is a medium-sized one. You can get the small ones, and those are relatively cheap. I think they're like $10, $15 here in Australia. They're 1.5 kilo, 3 kilo bottles. But they will save your life, literally, in the case of a bad fire. And, some of these items can be relatively expensive, but you're normally only paying for them once. And once they're there to be used. You can use them in the case of a disaster. If you haven't spent that money and you don't have that item, you're kind of out of luck. So I do recommend getting a fire extinguisher for your shop, at least a small one, if not a larger one. Depending on how the size of your shop, you might need a larger fire extinguisher. I also recommend the white banded fire extinguishers, which are ABE dry powder. Now, the dry powder extinguishers, the reason I recommend them is because they'll put out any fire. They'll put out electrical fire, they'll put out oil fires, they'll put out grease fires, they will put out paper fires or wood fires, they'll put out any kind of fire. Similarly, you can use the foam extinguishers or the CO2 extinguishers. They're pretty good for both wood and oil fires, although the foam you can't use on electrical because it has a water base and becomes conductive. So whatever you do, don't use a foam extinguisher on an electrical fire. But the ABE dry powder kind of does it all. It is a very messy extinguisher, so in the event that you do have to use it, you will be cleaning up for ages. But better to be cleaning up powder than cleaning up a burned down shed. So make sure you get yourself a fire extinguisher and put it somewhere in your shop that's easily accessible. I always have one close to hand when I'm working in my shop. And last but not least, this is a very quick video. I always have a first aid kit. Always. I am safety first aid qualified as part of my career as a security guard. I had to be, and I've continued that after I left the industry because I think that it's really important for everyone to have a first aid background. I don't use it most days, but there will be those days where I will be required to use my training to help someone or save a life. And sometimes I use it to save myself. So I recommend, if you haven't done a safety first aid course, senior first aid course, go out and book one. They're really cheap. They're like $100. You do it over 2 days, but you could potentially save one of your loved ones' lives, a stranger's life, or even your own. It also teaches you how to use a first aid kit, because it's all well and good to have one, but unless you've got the training to use it, then you're going to open it and kind of go, oh, bandage, that'll do, without knowing what you're supposed to be doing. And in an industry where you can get cut, you can get ground, you can get burned, you can get all kinds of nasty injuries, being able to treat yourself is incredibly important. So a cheap first aid kit goes for like $50. I think I paid $50 for this one, and it's pretty much kitted out in whatever I need. I've added a couple of my own little things, and maybe I'll do a video on what I put in my first aid kit. But even a basic first aid kit is going to give you the stuff that you need to stem the flow of blood in the event that you cut a vein or something like that. It's long enough that you can get to a hospital. So again, it's an expense. I understand that a lot of us don't have a lot of money, but at the end of the day, I'd much rather you spent the money and took that hit on your wallet, but saved yourself in the event that you get injured. So those are all of the items that I have, the basic items for first aid and safety here in the workshop. Now again, I say that I don't use them sometimes, and that is my risk, and that is my responsibility. And I take the risk of getting injured. When things go bad, I get hurt, and when I get hurt, I'm out of the game for a week. So you have to understand that whenever you refuse to use the safety equipment that you get given or that you have, you're putting yourself at risk, and you only have yourself to blame. And that comes to my last point about safety in the workshop. Safety is a frame of mind. A lot of the time I have been injured, most of the times that I've been injured in this workshop or outside of this workshop, is when I haven't thought about what I'm doing before I did it, working in a dangerous environment. For instance, this injury could have been avoided because what happened was the pressure cooker lid that I was working, the pressure cooker lid on my pressure cooker wasn't latched properly. And I noticed it wasn't latched properly because it has a little pin that tells you that whether it's latched properly or not. So all I did was go, oh, okay, I'll close it. And I grabbed it and turned it. But the problem was that I turned it the wrong way. And what that did was create an explosive release of pressure, which then shot boiling liquid all over me. If I'd taken an extra half second to just look at the arrows on the lid that said close, open, I would have saved myself a serious injury, a lot of pain, and I would have been able to be at work today swinging a hammer. So when you're in the workshop, take that extra second to look at what you're doing, think about what you're doing, and how it could go wrong, and then try and mitigate that. When I'm working the grinder, I'm standing outside of the range of the sparks from the grinder, because if anything gets grabbed by the grinder and flipped at me, I'm not going to be in the path of that flying object. Same thing when I'm working the buffer. That I now do second nature. It just comes to me immediately. I just do it without thinking. But that's only because I've done it consciously hundreds of times before. When I'm in the workshop now and I drop a piece of hot metal, I jump to get out of the way rather than put my foot or hand underneath it. But again, that is a learned behavior because the first couple of times that I dropped a piece of material, I tried to catch it. So when you get out into the workshop, make sure that you keep safety as one of those bits of your mind that you always have on high alert. Because when you get injured, you don't only hurt, it doesn't just hurt. It also prevents you from continuing to work and continuing to follow this passion that we all love. So guys, I hope you get out there and make something beautiful. I hope you have fun in the workshop, but I hope you're safe while you're doing it. I'll be uploading another video on Wednesday. Make sure you get and check that out. And I will be streaming next Saturday, hopefully, disasters notwithstanding. Alright guys, I'll see you in the next video. Lastly, I'd just like to thank my patrons, Andy, Nathan, and Kine. You guys are awesome. You guys keep a hammer in my hand and gas in the tank. You guys keep me going when I think that I can't. I'd also like to thank each and every one of you that's commented on my videos, each and every one of you that's supported me on my Instagram and my Facebook feeds. I love all of you, and I'm really thankful to have such a great community surrounding me. I'd also like to encourage you, if you haven't already, please subscribe and hit that notification icon to be notified of when I upload a new video, because I upload weekly and I'm always interested in having new members of the family. Also, if you could hit that like button, it really helps get the video out there. And if you want to share it around with your friends, let them know that, that I'm doing this and that they can get a lot of information from me as well. So anyway guys, have a good one.